All right, so we need to start talking more about energetics and specifically how bioenergetics plays into the orgone spectrum as discussed by Wilhelm Reich and how it falls in these different levels of like positive orgone radiation and deadly orgone radiation and the correlation between human behavior and moods and how that how there's a specific correlation between how you experience emotions and how that is converted into extractable energy via these different spectrums if the research proves to be correct. So before we can talk about this, though, because part of what is going to fix the problem, if it's what's happening, I think is happening, is that we need to start talking about how we can reintroduce things that are of a positive orgone radiation spectrum into our environment. And we can't really talk about doing that until we acknowledge what's happening with D.O.R. and learn, more about that. And what speaks to that a little bit is the cultural engineering that we've been experiencing lately, and I think the degradation of our culture that seems to be deliberate as far as we seem to be socially engineering sexual degradation into our culture. So if you start to understand that there has been introduced an economy surrounding DOR, deadly orgone radiation extraction, and that it would be extracted most from people that have stronger energy signatures or what like people call an aura or auric field. This is what kirilian photography reveals, and I've discussed that in some of my other presentations. Basically, that they can take an image of you using this type of photography, where they can actually see what type of aura field that you project. And so, if the research proves correct, I believe that this is the correlation to the ether or orgone that falls within these different spectrums of positive and deadly orgone, right? So the people that are involved with like the Human Genome Project, especially, they've been studying this since the mid '80s, and I do believe that they understand this quite intrinsically. It was the Department of Energy and the National Health Institute that started the Human Genome Project, and so naturally they would be the ones that had the most data on this. So it's important to understand, who has these energy signatures, because oftentimes they could be potentially in situations where they're being exploited specifically for this, and which means that there would be people interested in manipulating their environment, their moods, and the circumstances that they live in specifically to extract it as energy. So, just because I'm inclined to think more sociologically, and I'm asking myself, so how can we have an open discussion about what's happening right now with bioenergetics? Because it's going to involve changes to our culture that where we promote healthy sexual expression, but we also have to acknowledge that what we're dealing with right now is a culture of very severe coerced sexual expression oftentimes, and I think that there's a lot of unhealthy activity going on right now, and sometimes just overt acts of sexual violence that should not be tolerated in our culture. But the thing is because we're kind of in a spiritual battle, part of the reason why these people that do this do it is specifically because they want us to be angry. They want us to be traumatized. They want it to traumatize us in ways that anchor us to that trauma to where we don't recover from it, so that it sort of harnesses that energy and the POR never emanates from us. See, that it's very much a spiritual battle once you really start to understand this. So we have to find ways to both proactively promote POR spectrum energy, healthy sexual expressions, especially when there's people out there that have high concentrations of it, and while at the same time addressing all the problems that are encouraging and fostering a culture of DOR extraction if it's happening the way that I think it is. And I think once you start studying the research into some of these signal levels that I've been finding and how that correlates with the distributed antenna systems, that there's certain people that because of their energy signature, if you pulse them at a frequency band that's very specific, there's a couple different frequencies. I don't want to get too into that right now, but they've learned how to extract DOR and POR energy from people using some of these systems that involve copper plumbing lines that can sort of like pull it out via osmosis. That's what I believe is occurring. But in order to prove this out, we're going to have to start opening ourselves up to some discussions, and working with a lot of different people. And I saw a lot of opportunities for how we can both fix some problems with our culture, promote healthy sexual expression, while also tackling some of the issues that are wrong within these industries. Especially, we really want to expand on what is right, like who is out there that is really promoting healthy sexual expression, who is working within the sex industry, who is doing it the right way, is doing it healthy, which there is a lot of people out there doing that, right? So we need to promote those things while also not tolerating acts of coercion, force, and trauma-based control. Okay, so The thing that I want you to kind of call attention to is that, people who have these strong energy signatures, they'll output a great deal of this orgone energy in either spectrum. They're more naturally inclined to be POR generators, but see what these people want to do is both prevent them from generating POR spectrum, positive orgone radiation, which oftentimes is done through healthy sexual expression, and to redirect that energy inward so that they can actually extract it through these types of radiant osmosis-based systems. Okay, if you don't understand this is a real dynamic and that it involves a real extractable ether, and that there's people who've learned how to do this, then it's going to be hard for you to make that leap to understand there's people that are being enslaved by this methodology and they're being unfairly exploited. Okay, so the point is that the people that have this POR, if they were treated properly and elevated in our culture, you would understand that they have a natural talent for healing. That at an orgone level, at a DNA level, their natural talent is to be a healer. And a lot of times, one of the things that motivates people to get into some of these industries is precisely because they recognize that in themselves and want to share themselves in that way. And I've seen examples of, performers and workers that was precisely their theology. And, I had to ask myself, you know, there's different spectrums here, right? There's people that are like that, that you really should be focusing on what are they doing right, you know? But at the same time, we also have to acknowledge that there is an element of people who are not willfully sharing themselves, who are experiencing a state of coercion that involves radionics, electromagnetic pulse modulated signals, DAS environments that can kind of have like a remote shot caller type effect on them. They have teams of people that can be hired to follow these people around like resources to make sure that they're, brought back to wherever they're supposed to go. I don't think people understand the dynamic of how powerful some of these networks are that are controlling people, specifically to extract energy. That is kind of an unknown right now in a broad scale. Okay. So, because I did an article recently about my cousin as a sports broadcaster, she used this term, young controllable assets, when referring to an athlete on the radio. They were kind of going back and forth talking about this, and it kind of got me thinking a little bit about, I made a point that, hey, can't we talk about an athlete with more respect? So in all fairness to my cousin, I'll lay on my own sword here, and just for this, using a metaphor, sorry. What I mean to say is that I'll at least apply the same logic to myself that I was going to apply to her, because if I'm going to be fair, the same type of language, like young controllable assets, is oftentimes used in the pornography industry and adult films, right? There's sort of a language of disrespect that's just sort of accepted as normal, right? Whereas within athletes, we kind of, elevate them. We talk about that they're warriors, they're, all these great words of dignity, to examine what they do and to describe what they do, and to elevate them in our society as these, fierce, strong warriors. But, it's like we have this language of violence when we're discussing people that do, place themselves at the same level of risk within the sex industry, people that do adult films that have very limited career durations, the same way as a professional athlete or a boxer. It's just because of the nature of it. A lot of these people just have to have a limited career in what they do. Yet, when we're talking about an athlete, we elevate them and we pay them, millions of dollars per year. When we're talking about an adult film worker, male or female, they're making hundreds of dollars or whatever per whatever, while the producers are making millions and getting over on everybody. And you understand how there's a sort of imbalance in the way that we sort of treat one group of people who are in sports of aggression, where people that are on the human sexual end of the spectrum of sharing their bodies or doing things that are pleasing or provide pleasure to one another, they try to almost go out of the way to reverse those things, to denigrate them, to place these people in cultures of degradation, when in all actuality, when you really compare these activities, why are we paying one group of people millions of dollars and then the other one gets paid $100 or a few $100s or whatever? You understand that? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And beyond the lack of pay, there's just the level of disrespect, that's tolerated. And I think there's things that we can do better. So in all fairness to my cousin, I wanted to apply that to a lesson that I personally learned, and I'll share this with everybody. It was there's a Netflix documentary called Hot Girls Wanted, and anybody who is currently, a consumer, I would say, of adult material should at least give it an honest view. Now, again, it's kind of a shocking documentary. It definitely is going to show you some things that are going to make you really disgusted, and I think that's a good thing. I think that men kind of need to see that not every one of these scenes that you may be watching in the adult industry is being done, with this whole willful participation. Not all these ladies are just acting or just playing along. Sometimes when they're doing these scenes, man, they're with a guy that they're disgusted by. They showed up not knowing that they were going to be partnered with a person that they don't like. I mean, there's a lot of really awful things that you start to witness in the making of this documentary, and it changed my perspective completely. Now, here's the problem I have, though. I do believe that there's room for healthy sexual expression. See, but I don't think that people like the guys that sort of recruit the young ladies in that documentary should be the people doing that. They seem to me to be very predatory. They seem to be just waiting, kind of thing, and that's what bothers me about it. And then they get, they kind of intentionally go out of their way to get these young ladies to move from small towns, 1 or 2 thousand miles away, or a few thousand miles away, or whatever, from where they're from. So they wind up, being from the Midwest and flying all the way out to Florida, and then, they're getting them drunk and, feeding them whatever, and it seems like they're having a good time, right? They even give them a place to stay. They give them their own room or something like that, right? And it seems like they're living the high life a little bit. But once you start understanding that there's radionics involved sometimes, a lot of times what these guys do is it's just the way to get them there as bait. Give them a little bit of money, make them feel confident, get them to tell their parents back home that they don't want to ever come back, and now they're stuck, you know, and you can see this happening. So I'm trying to determine, what are situations where somebody's making a willful decision and where is there a manipulation of their will. And by that I mean a free will decision must be free of their environment must be free of being manipulated by external sources of interference, behaviorally, chemically, and what isn't discussed often is electromagnetically. Because once you understand that there's these DAS systems that are being installed in places that can, affect people's behavior, control them, kind of act like a remote shot caller, you'll understand. You'll start to reevaluate all your previous assumptions about what is truthfully willful. And so I'm just trying to find ways where we can both promote healthy sexual expression, but also fix what's wrong in the industry. And I'm willing to go to some pretty, far lengths to prove that I'm committed to this, really. I believe these people deserve far more respect than they're receiving currently. And I would like to promote an environment through which we offer that, and that until we can find more places that are more open to these people within standard work environments, that we just start to create work environments or networks of work environments where people are allowed to transition between either sex work or the adult industry into other professions if that's their choice. Or if they want to stay in it, they're at least provided with a healthier option where they're provided a good income and proper respect for what they do. And I think that's, there's ways that you can accomplish all these things simultaneously while also providing like security service for those people who may be in a state where, that's not the case, right? So all I'm trying to get people to think about here a little bit is that, that we need to acknowledge that we need to respect men and women who make the decision to share their bodies, whether on film or through physical contact, because they deserve at least the same respect as any other person walking down the street. And beyond that, when you think about the types of risks they take to their body and their reputation, primarily because our culture is so flawed and judges people in ways that are very unfair and don't demonstrate, what individuals make as decisions themselves to contribute to this culture, perhaps we should give them, at least the same respect that we offer a boxer or a football player. Somebody who takes multiple hits to the head, and then you pay them millions of dollars. And then if something happens to them, you feel sorry for them. Maybe we should feel that same degree of, respect for people who put themselves at risks to make people, to provide healthy sexual expression for people, and don't you think we can do better there too? So, in all fairness to my cousin, can we do better in this industry as well? Not just in sports. Can we do better in the adult industry? Can we do better for our culture? So I'm going to be providing some ideas on how we can do this, how we can both promote healthy sexual behaviors, a healthy culture where, people that are involved with these things are respected and given the dignity they deserve, but not allowing these spirit vampires to win, because there is kind of a science to what they do, and reversing it is pretty easy. But because what these people are doing is just trying to basically reverse nature, they're just trying to hold it up, slow it down, and we just need to respect and love one another in a respectful environment that provides appropriate levels of respect to the men and women who have placed or placed themselves at risk to promote healthy sexual expression in our culture. And just for the record, I personally define that as consenting, non-coerced, and between adults. Very important. Okay? So I will be looking to form some partnerships because I see enormous potential for employment opportunities for people currently in these industries who are in sex work or in the adult film industry who also want to explore more healing modes of like positive orgone radiation spectrums, because you need to have people that are very open-minded and that don't mind discussing things involving human sexuality, um, both participating in testing potentially, as well as people who would like to be involved with the testing, because you need to be in an environment where everybody's accepting and not judgmental. So that's extremely important, and I see a lot of opportunities for us to do a lot of things simultaneously. We can be doing POR research. We could be doing sort of like an underground railroad type network, providing people some opportunities where they would get a good place to work. And we may just have to create it ourselves. So, I'm just trying to throw this out there because um, I can see a lot of opportunities for providing a work environment for a lot of these people who have an enormous wealth of untapped talent, particularly for those who want to serve a larger part in possible like rescue security services, whether at an official level or at a nonprofit level, because there's a lot of NGOs right now that provide rescue services for people, and I don't think all of them have the greatest ethics. So, one way to fix that might be to start our own. I don't, I kind of prefer things that are a little bit different than that, but, I'm just trying to think of in terms of why are these things entrusted to people that don't seem to be doing it the right way, So, what better group of people to do that than somebody that's from these industries, especially when it comes to data analysis. And I just throw this out there for our government too, before you start, you need to think about the type of work environment you can provide for people who are from these industries, especially when it comes to data analysis, because the methodologies for, people doing dark web type activity and things like that are becoming sophisticated now. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to determine what's real from what's fake. And sometimes data analysts who have a background, in sex work or in the adult film industry would be your go-to people if you're really looking for data analysts and people that can, decipher what's real from what's fake. And you really need to take that into consideration, because I think right now you have a huge security gap because you're trusting a lot of people that have only proven that they have such a lack of experience, or that they're not willing to discuss openly the truth about their experience in all actuality. And those are the only ones you'll hire for, groups like the NSA and for security services. So you should at least investigate potentially at a contract level, reaching out to some of these other groups, if we can form one that might utilize these people's, skill sets on all levels. There's a lot of things that these people can offer that don't even, it doesn't have to involve that either, guys. I'm just saying that's one way that if we're talking about how do we find transitionary methods, how do we promote healthy sexual expression, how do we fix what's wrong with the industry, make what's good better. And I think that especially things that involve POR research and orgone research are going to be huge behind this, because if you understand the problem right now is that we have an excess of D.O.R that's in our environment, and that one of the ways that we'll be able to fix this is by having a greater understanding of how orgone works. We really do need to have people that will understand this and be willing to work in a very open environment. And I personally see a lot of opportunities for these people, because just looking at some of these people, they tried to when they were done in the adult film industry, they tried to go be like a nurse or work in a hospital, and they really, worked hard to be like the top of their class, only to find themselves in a culture of discrimination. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities where those people who develop those skill sets, like in hospitals especially, where their skill set, like I don't know anything about those things. I'm trying to learn about, POR and D.O.R energy and how they interacts with blood and plasma levels. I don't understand those things. So there's a lot of people out there that really are just looking for somebody to show them the appropriate levels of dignity and respect, and that they deserve. They deserve it. and they should expect it, and we need to promote all the people that are promoting it healthily, and also address all the issues where it's not being done that way. And I think that the POR research and integrating other ways of exploring sexual expression into POR research is probably one of the keys. And I see a lot of opportunities for people that have been in these industries to transition into this research, for a lot of different things where people would be sharing their skill sets, and I just see a lot of opportunities here personally. So anyways, just to fix what's wrong with our culture, and anyways, I don't know. I just think I'd personally like to see a society where the people that have been involved with these industries, adult stars and sex workers, are admired the same way that you would like a Muhammad Ali or a George Foreman. That sometimes people, they actually, it's a craft, and they learn how to do things right, and they're athletes, and they have a finite career sometimes. So let's like reevaluate how we discuss people's reputations and the way we address them, and remember that people that are involved with healthy sexual expression have done things for people and been unacknowledged in our culture up until now, and that's wrong. So I'm just telling all my brothers out there, all the other guys out there, man up, because this is how you show respect. Seriously.